Praise the Lord, everyone. It's Wednesday night. We are halfway through the week. I'm very excited. I like Wednesdays. Thank you for being here. You were right. I am not Pastor Justin. He is out of town visiting family. So tonight, I'm very excited to bring a word that I feel like I have from the Lord and share it with you all tonight. While he is not here, I do want to give honor to my pastor and to my First Lady, Sister Michelle, and all the leaders in my life. I'm very thankful for them and just how they've helped me grow. And I stand up here not because of how much I love public speaking, but because of their support and encouragement, and thankful for them. Also want to shout out to my parents who I think are watching. It makes all the difference to have godly leaders and godly parents. And as I teach these incredible young people every week, it just reminds me how important it is for them to have godly examples like all of you in their lives, also pouring into them. So thank you, but I give honor to them. I am the last member of the Allen Poe family to have a permanent residence in Nebraska. Isn't that so weird? Never thought that would happen, but here we are. Before we get started, I was sent a bullet-pointed email, so I'm going to make sure I follow everything before I get into the word. Announcements. So this coming Sunday, October 20th at 9:40, coffee and conversation in the foyer. Good time to greet and fellowship one another. And then next Wednesday, so a week from tonight, October 23rd at 7 p.m., we are having a bilingual service in the main sanctuary here. Keith and Janice Shostrand will be speaking, so you do not want to miss it. Looking forward to them being here and their ministry with us. We do want to start with prayer requests. Let me see what I have. Does anybody have, I have here some prayers needs, but does anybody have any specific needs that we need to pray about tonight as a body? Anyone? Yes, Sister Lorette. Wonderful. Sister Laura is asking for prayer for her health, and also her grandson is coming home from Indiana. So pray for a smooth transition in that. Sister Bythrow? Oh, yeah, okay. Yes, yeah. Sister Felty? Okay, Sister Felty's, your cousin? Okay, Sister Felty's cousin, serious prayer need there. Any other needs tonight? Isaac? Okay. Yes, pray for Pastor as he travels, and also Bishop and Sister Anthony. Bishop had another round of chemo, so we want to keep him in our prayers as well. Any other needs? Man, in youth we have a board and we write it all down because I forget it, but I'm gonna remember. I'm just gonna work around the room. Any other needs tonight? All right, if we could all stand and take these needs to the Lord and pray over the word tonight and our time together. Jesus, we love you and we thank you for the opportunity to come together and worship you. I ask that you would be with every need that's been spoken, God, and even those that are unspoken in this room tonight, Lord. Prayers of healing for Sister Lorette, God, and also her grandson, that there would be a smooth transition, Lord. A miracle's already taken place in that situation, and I ask that you would continue to bless her. Lord, I ask that you would be with Sister Felty's cousin in this serious situation, God, that you would be the provider, the healer, the protector, and whatever is going on in that situation. We believe in you. We have faith in you, Lord. I ask that you would be with my pastor as he travels, protect him and keep him safe on that road, Lord. And I ask that you would be with my bishop and Sister Anthony. Keep them in your loving arms, God. Wrap them up, Lord. Give them health and protection and love and direct the doctors as they administer their protection to. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. All right, you may be seated. I was told to open with a joke. So my joke is that the reason I'm wearing all black is because I heard that the service was going to be live streamed, and they say camera adds 10 pounds, and there are 3. So complex math says that's 30 pounds. So all black it was. Didn't even think twice about it. I was like, no patterns, all black. So here we go. That's actually not a joke, it's just real life. Okay. I am going to open with attitudes. Without raising your hand, how many of you walked in here tonight with the attitude of, I don't want to be here? Or, I'm just glad my kid is in nursery or Bethel Kids and I get an hour free. Okay, some smiles, okay? Or, the young people are thinking, I get to listen to Cherith speak again in a row. Yes, so excited. Our attitudes and our countenance can be so important. Are our attitudes properly reflecting Jesus to those around us? Do we have the attributes that Paul lists in Ephesians chapter 4, verses 2 and 3? The verse says, and I did not type it out here, with all lowliness and meekness, with long-suffering, forbearing one another in love, enduring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. With humbleness and meekness, do we have these attributes? Are we living in peace? I had the privilege of being with the Huffmans in Lincoln this last Sunday, and he talked about being a peacekeeper and a peacemaker. Are we truly living a life of peace? I talked to a friend last night who was watching a political debate, and in the tone of her voice, there was no peace in her life at the time that she was listening to this debate. There was no peace. There was a lot of aggravation. There was a lot of confusion. There was a lot of question marks, a lot of why are people saying things? Why do people think this way? But there was no peace. Are our attributes, is our countenance showing peace? Do we have peace? Are we living loved? If we have these attributes that are Christ-like, people should be able to see that our lives have been changed, right? They should be able to see that we have integrity. They should be able to see that we're not just like everybody else. If the world can see that our attitude is not like the world, but your mind and attitude is Christ-like, then you can be a credible and powerful witness. I recently finished a book by a author named Lisa. I cannot pronounce her last name. She's a Proverbs 31 woman that speaks on the radio. Does anybody know how to say her last name? Turkhurst. Okay. Her book is called Uninvited. And I was reading through this book, and at a season in my life, if I can be very open with you about, there are some things, I'm in a season of my life where a lot of my friends aren't at the same place as me. And so it can feel like that people don't really understand what we're going through when we feel like we're surrounded by people who are in different seasons. And while it's so fun to celebrate the seasons that they're in, sometimes it can be really challenging not to ask the question of, well, why am I in this season and they get to be in that season? In whatever it is, whether it's personal or spiritual or in just whatever area. But the enemy, may I say that the enemy wants us to feel rejected. He wants us to feel left out. He wants us to feel lonely and to feel less than everyone else. And just because my season or your season are different doesn't mean that my season is less than your season, or I'm less than you, or vice versa. We all have a different calling. We all have a different path to walk. And it can be so powerful to realize that you are not less than in your season and still be able to celebrate someone else's season. Sometimes society tells us that if we're not in the same place as someone else at our age or our walk of life, or if our I don't have kids, but I have friends with kids. If your kid isn't reading at the same level as the next person's kid, that you're failing as a parent, or, your kid's not as smart, or just all of these things, that you can't celebrate that other person's season or where they're at in their life, right? And that's so opposite of what the church is. I love getting to come here every Wednesday, every Sunday, and celebrate the different seasons that people are in. Even in our girls' nights when we all get together, and there's several of us now, and we go around the room and we all have time to express and to celebrate where we're all going, it's good to be able to encourage each other that the season of life that you're in is good and it's exciting, or maybe it's hard, and we can pray together or cry together. And I think it's important that as a church we have that unity of community. You can't have community without unity, right? So it's important that we have that. But the enemy wants you to feel in your season that it's less than someone else, or that you're rejected because you didn't get invited to a certain event, or feel left out because you found out 4 days later that all your friends got together and did something, and you're like, oh, I would have really liked to do that, or I would have really liked to go on that little weekend trip or whatever. And he wants us to feel like that. But how many of you know that proximity and activity don't always equal connectivity, right? So how true is it that we can be in a room filled with people and yet feel so entirely alone? May I share my heart with you in a sincere question? Maybe the problem isn't the people around us not inviting us into their conversations. Maybe it's because we do not have a fullness that comes from God. Maybe there are times where being in this situation would cause some of us, myself included, where we're in a room filled with people, to feel like we couldn't breathe unless someone else invited us in. Or you're in a social situation and you're just looking for a group, you're scanning a group going, somebody give me a vibe. Who can I go talk to and interrupt their conversation and not feel weird, right? Or you're just like, well, I'm just going to play on my phone. I'm just going to walk over here and do something else. Or I'm going to go to the bathroom for the second time in the 10 minutes that I've been in here because I don't know who I'm going to talk to in this room. And it can feel like everybody else has a group, everybody else has a person that they're connecting to and they're talking to. So proximity to people doesn't always mean that you're connecting with someone. But there are times where we could feel like we couldn't breathe unless somebody was inviting us in. But should we, as the church, be on the lookout for those outliers and bring them in? Absolutely. But we cannot expect someone else to be the oxygen to our souls. Here's the shift that should happen in our minds. Do I walk into situations prepared with the fullness of God in me, free to look for ways to bless others? Or do I walk into situations empty and dependent on others to look for ways to bless me? There are times where we do need to fill each other's buckets. There are times where I walk into church and I feel like you bless me more than I bless you. And there are other times, to be honest, where I walk out and I go, I poured everything out today, but I feel so good about it, right? There are seasons for both. But people prepared with the fullness of God in them are not superhuman people with confidence spilling out at all times. They aren't the ones who walk into a room with the loud, hey, 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 the party can start because I'm here now. I've arrived. And they certainly aren't the ones who circle the room making sure their agenda is the agenda of every conversation. No, the fullness of God is tucked into those secret, sacred places within them. The full taking in of God is their soul oxygen. It's not that they don't need people. They do. We all do. God created them and us for community. But the way they love is from a full place, not from an empty desperation. They are living loved. The more we fill ourselves with his life-giving love, the less we will be controlled by the grabbiness of the flesh. I want this, and I imagine that you do too. And it's an ever-evolving chapter. When the Bible talks about putting aside the flesh, it doesn't mean putting it aside when we come on Wednesday nights or on Sundays or on the evenings when you're hanging out with church people. We must choose every day to set it aside and focus on the things of God. In August of last year, I decided to choose my long-term health over short-term happiness in moving to a plant-based diet. For those of you that don't know what that is, it means no dairy, no meat, no fun of any kind when it comes to eating, right? At least that's what I was told. But in praying about this, I had been so ill after every meal for several months in a row. And I prayed and I said, God, why am I sick after every meal? What's going on? I had a dietitian. I went to the doctor and I got all my blood tested and I got all my sensitivity levels tested. Everything was fine. But after every meal, I was feeling sick and groggy and I just didn't feel like myself or like I could give 100% of myself to the rest of my day. And as I was praying about this, I said, God, I take care of myself. I drink water and I go to the gym and I try to get as much sleep as I can. And, I don't do these other things, the things in the Bible that are bad for you. Like, I don't do all that. And he goes, if I gave you a temple and if your temple is telling you that you're not feeling good, then why are you still continuing to abuse your temple? And I was like, well, I guess when you put it like that, it all makes sense. So I decided to move to this new lifestyle of taking out the things that were making me ill. And if you've spent any amount of time with me, you know I have a good love for steak, a healthy, strong love for steak. But it really was after every meal, no matter how healthy it was in calories, I was just sick. So that doesn't mean that I don't miss normal pizza and mashed potatoes. My flesh begs me to believe that short-term happiness is worth the long-term misery. Here's what I've discovered over the last year about my health and the flesh. If I fill my stomach with healthy plant-based foods before being tempted with the steak or lasagna, I can say no. It's so much easier for me to turn away the steak if you're completely full already. Crazy, right? Because there's always room for steak. But if you're desperately hungry, a dish of just about anything is hard to turn away. Our souls and stomachs are alike in that way. Paul is praying in Ephesians chapter 3 and references the fullness of God. Verse 17 says, this is KJV and then I'll read it in the ESV, that Christ may dwell in your hearts by faith, that ye being rooted and grounded in love, verse 18, may be able to comprehend with all saints what is the breadth and the length and depth and height, and to know the love of Christ, which passeth knowledge, that ye might be filled with all the fullness of God. The English Standard Version says, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, that you, being rooted and grounded in love, may have the strength to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled with the fullness of God. Once we reach and grasp the fullness of the love of God, we can be filled with the fullness of God. We all crave acceptance that comes from being loved, and here we receive the instructions on how to receive that love. But the opposite of grasping for God's love is grabbing for people's love. If we grasp the love of Christ, we won't grab at other things to fill us. Or if we do, we'll sense it. We'll feel that prick in our spirit when our flesh makes frenzied swipes at happiness, compromising clutches for attention, paranoid assumptions with no facts, joyless attempts to one-up each other, and small-minded statements of pride. That's a direct quote from Lisa's book, and it really hit me right between the eyes. We'll sense these things and we'll be disgusted enough to at least pause. In this pause lies the greatest daily choice we can make. Am I willing to tell my flesh no so that I can say yes to the fullness of God in this situation? When past rejections make us so prone to satisfying or at least numbing the flesh to avoid more pain, it's hard to resist. Spiritual maturity doesn't shield me from rejection, but oh, how I wish it could. All these things we're tempted to grab at, they won't fill us the way we think they will. In the end, they will only make us feel emptier and more rejected. Yes, the concept of telling our flesh no can sound so good on paper, right? I'm just going to say no. I'm just going to say no pizza, no steak. It'll be fine. It'll be easy. And then You go to that party. They're like, we're having pizza tonight. And you're like, I'm fasting. Can't believe it. Or I'll bring my salad. That is the worst when you walk in with a salad and everybody else is eating pizza or steak or anyway. Lisa made me the best. Side note, Lisa Ross made me the best vegan mashed potatoes of all time last year at Thanksgiving. Still talking about those. Anyway, it can be so hard to tell our flesh no in the middle of the situation when it sounds so easy on paper. In the midst of rejection, we can often feel so very powerless. That's where we have to know we aren't expected to just put on a brave face and hope for the very best. We have the power through Christ. We are full and fully loved and accepted and empowered to say no to the flesh. If we live rooted and established in His love, we don't just have knowledge of His love in our minds, but it becomes a reality that anchors us. His love is a glorious weight, preventing the harsh words and hurtful situations from being a destructive force. We feel the wind, but we aren't destroyed by it, Lisa said in her book. You are full because Christ brought fullness to you. How sweet is it to serve a God who would bring the fullness to us? While there are times where we have to search for it ourselves, while there are times where we can look around and say there is no fullness of anything anywhere in sight, we serve a God that will bring the fullness of love and the fullness of grace to us. Yes, I am fully loved. I'm fully accepted and fully empowered to say no to my flesh. Speak that truth in the power that He's given you. Believe that truth in the power He's given you. Live that truth in the power He's given you. That's how you tell your flesh no. That's how you live fully prepared in the fullness of God. I'd like to take a minute to pray and just ask that God would help us live in the fullness and the confidence, live in the fullness of Him and have the confidence to resist the flesh and live loved. God, I thank you for your love. I thank you for the grace and the purpose that you fill us with each day. I ask that you would be with each person in this room tonight. God, that we would find our purpose within you, that we would find the desire to live fully loved. God, you are a God of grace and mercy, and I thank you that you bring it to me every day, that your cross was such an example of love that I can go to that anytime I'm in need and know that you will replenish me and restore my soul. God, thank you for the confidence to live fully empowered, to set aside my flesh and to choose you every day. God, I ask that you would be with each of us in this room, that we would live boldly in that confidence and live in the fullness of your word and your love. In Jesus' name. Our attitudes are powerful things. Our attitudes in the way that we talk to each other and talk about each other and talk about ourselves are powerful things. In Lisa's book, she has an example of when she was at the airport and she had left her luggage at the hotel and they were about to stop accepting luggage for that flight. And it kind of rung true with me because this has happened before where I've either missed a flight or forgot my luggage or something. And in a moment of kind of she attacked herself and she said something mean about herself. I can't believe you were such an idiot, Lisa. It's such a stupid thing to do. Why would you leave your luggage at the hotel? And the guy behind the counter actually said, no, don't speak about yourself like that. It's not okay. The words that we say carry so much power. The attitude and the eyes in which we look at ourselves and talk about ourselves have power. They have weight, right? And we are sometimes our greatest critics. But the second part of living loved is knowing that we are loved and being able to accept that. It can be so easy to allow ourselves to say things about ourselves that we would never let fly if we heard somebody else had said it about us. If we heard somebody else call us an idiot, you better believe we're going to be like, oh, I wonder who that was. Who did you hear that from? who said that? What was the context? We usually don't care about context, but we're usually trying to figure that out, right? But then we say about ourselves, it's so acceptable. And I want to encourage you to see yourself through the eyes in which God sees you. And that for him to come and to die for us and to say that you are loved and that you are worthy should be enough to allow us to see that way about ourselves as well. I want to know if I'm going off script, which is crazy, but I just felt this. I want to know if anybody has a story or something to share, an experience to share about this that maybe relates. I don't know who I just got told to ask, so I'm asking. Does anybody have anything they want to share? Sister Dodie? Thank you for sharing. I know sometimes it's easy to go to the place of I was right, or to have that attitude, but I think it's important that not only does God tell us, right? He calls us out on that. That's happened to me. That happened to me on Monday, which is also where the attitude thing came in for me. So thank you, 2 or 3. But I think that it's powerful when God will call us out on it and when we will take that step and go out in faith and say, hey, I was wrong. I'm really sorry about that. But our attitudes really do have such a big part in how people will see us. Are we a credible witness based on how people view us, right? Are we speaking love or are we tearing people down? Because there are people in my workplace that I don't necessarily spend all that much time with because of the things that I hear them talk about. And I don't want to get up into that. It is so easy, but we have to stay consistent in love and in God's goodness and living loved. Does anybody else have anything they want to share? Okay. I want to encourage you that while the enemy will work so hard to make us feel left out and make us feel like we're not worthy of our friend groups or of the conversations of people around us when we go into those social situations and we're like, I don't want to be here. I just want to be at home. I just want to be by myself, or I just want to be curled up with my pet or whatever it is. I think that we should work just as hard to live in the fullness that God has for us. And I just pray that we all have that this week. I talk really fast, and I'm basically done. So let's just visit the last 30 minutes. Let's live loved. Let's just walk around and find new groups of people to talk to. This is, okay, guys, this is totally planned out. See, just kidding, not done. So let's do this. Let's do an exercise, okay? We're going to find friend groups that we're not used to talking in, okay? We're all going to find somebody that we're not used to talking to, and we're going to spend just a couple of minutes. It's going to be like speed dating for friends. Can I say that? This is slideshow. I don't know. It's going to be like speed talking for friend groups. We're going to make some new friends tonight. So I want everybody to stand up. Okay. We're totally going to do this. Well, okay, guys, this is basically what youth is like sometimes. I get done and I'm like, we're going to do an exercise. Okay. Pastor's not going to see that. Just everybody tell Pastor that this was totally planned. Okay, so I want Pastor Andrew to stand in front of this section, and I want Brandy to stand in front of this section, and I want Jake Weaver to stand in front of this section. He is so mad at me. Don't care. I want Brother Paul Doty, can you stand in front of this section? And then my youth girls right here, but you're going to spread out. Youth girls here. Okay. So we are going to group. You're going to find a group to start with, and you're going to spend a couple minutes, and then you're going to move to the next group, okay? I want you to hit all 5 groups. Not hit, that's violent. I want you to join in with each group for a few minutes and just fellowship, okay? Make sure everybody in the group knows your name, knows who you are, okay? And then work through and just spend a couple minutes and just fellowship, okay? Are you ready? Set, go. I might ring a bell or something. I don't know. Let's make some friends. Make sure everybody knows your name. Come on up here. If you can walk, come on up. Let's talk in the groups. You can make side groups later. We've got main groups. Look, Pastor Andrew's all by himself. Nobody wants to talk to Pastor Andrew? I think he probably today.